Saddle up and dance. to all choose your timeline on the roller coaster of life. Oh, you seem to easily forget how to place your bet. When everyday life gets you down, you gotta steal the crown. Got to own it. Don't bitch and moan about it, please. God forbid you scrape your knees, and it's nothing to sneeze at. Oh, I've told you over and over again. You gotta get both hands around it and make your own plans. Roller coaster is taking over. It's about time. To all choose your timeline with the roller coaster of life. Roller coaster. I want to go down the rabbit hole, down the and now it's about to leave. Oh, roller coaster. Oh, roller coaster.
Hello, welcome to Revive Hi-Fi Canada, and our latest speaker feature is the Energy CB-10 Connoisseur Bookshelf Speakers. Yeah, this is Energy. This is originally a Canadian company. Energy has made speakers for many years. They have impressed me. I have not really met many Energy speakers that haven't impressed me so far on my journey here. They have, I believe, Energy speakers. They were bought by Klipsch at some point. I am not 100% sure if the Energy that we see now at this point with the CB-10, I know this is a relatively old speaker, they have now been bought by Klipsch. I'm not sure if this is before or after they were bought by Klipsch, but I'm gonna say right off the bat that similar to previous Energy speakers that I've reviewed and that I've tried during the last many years, these do have a great build quality. These have quite a well-braced box. So just right off the bat, you get a pretty solidly constructed box that's well-braced. You get pretty decent binding posts on the back. These are rear-ported speakers. You get the plastic rear port. But again, on the rear port, one thing that I do not appreciate always, but you know, it is what it is at this price point, and you know, these speakers definitely, the sound doesn't suffer for it at all, is that I don't always, it's not my favorite, it's a pet peeve of mine, that they do not have a fully plastic base port in the back. They have a kind of a hardened roll, paper-based, like a cardboard based roll, and I've seen this on the Paradigm SE monitor that I have. That's a Keeper Series speaker on our channel, as well as I've seen them on some PSB speakers that I've had. I believe the PSB Alpha P5 has that. And the P3 that we had on the channel, I believe, had a paper-based extension of the rear port. So it is what it is. I prefer it to be all plastic, hard plastic, kind of like the acoustic Energies that we had, or the Wharfdale Diamond 12.1 that we have. But it is what it is, and like I said, it doesn't compromise the sound. The front has this really unique design. It's got a hard plastic front baffle, and in that baffle it's got the tweeter and the woofer mounted very close to each other, almost in concentric circles, not unlike the ELAC that we reviewed last week, interestingly. So the ELAC had concentric circles as well, but now we have the Energy, which also has concentric circles, and I believe that the goal of that type of design choice is to keep the tweeter as close to the woofer as possible, and that gives you more of a unified sound without having something like the UniQ driver that we have in the KevQ series speakers, where they have the tweeter inside the woofer, and I guess that's where you can't really beat how that coherent sound, although there are other things that go into it like the crossover, etc., that have to work in order to have that unified sound. These are really good black ash. They're of course with veneer, not veneer, sorry, they're not real wood veneer at this price point. They have a vinyl wrap around them. It's kind of expected. These are not very large speakers. They're about, here, let me just check. I believe that they are about 11.4 inches tall, 7.1 inches wide, and 8.5 inches deep. So they go pretty deep, and as we'll talk a bit more about it, that helps the bass. They have a 1-inch aluminum dome tweeter, which I quite enjoy on this one, although there's pluses and minuses. The woofer is 5.5 inch with a ribbed elliptical surround, and the ribbed elliptical surround reminds me very much of the Energy Connoisseur RC10, which had real wood veneer, which was one of the first speakers that we reviewed on the channel, and I think that it's really kind of, I guess, a later version here, but I believe that ribbing is supposed to help with extending bass and cleanliness of the bass, from what I remember from reading, but don't quote me on that, but I'm not sure. The aluminum tweeter is, sometimes some people don't appreciate aluminum tweeters because they sound sort of metallic, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I do like the type of woofer and the look of this speaker. It's quite nice. They do have, I kind of like that dust cover in the middle. I don't think that is what is called a phase plug. I think that is a dust cover that's looking sort of like what would be called a phase plug. So they do have pretty nice overall build quality for their price. They do have, as I said, they have really good binding posts as well on the back. I appreciate it. And going more into the sound now, I like, again, that the woofer and the tweeter are very close to each other. I think that helps with the overall sound. They have a sensitivity of 92 dB, and I believe they're 8 ohms, so they've got really easy to drive. So these would be pretty good at a desktop with some equalization, which we'll talk later about. They would be pretty good to use at your desktop because of their size. And I didn't get to try these on my desktop, but I would imagine that with a bit of equalization they could be quite good, and we'll talk about why that would be needed later. First, let's start with the treble on these. So the highs are extremely clean on these. In fact, they're really quite surprising. They're pretty high resolution sounding speakers when it's coming to the highs. When you get to the mids, that's where things get a little bit less. They're still really good, so this is me nitpicking, but these are very surprisingly good speakers. The mids is where kind of I would say they're not quite as thick sounding as other speakers that I have, but they're still pretty good. The lows actually are surprisingly good on these speakers. I would imagine that they've designed that way so you would get more of that sort of maybe of a V-shaped type of frequency response. But the mids are not bad at all. Vocals come through really clean. I was listening to Tragically Hip on these and the other day, and I would say that Gord Downie's voice came through amazing. Of course, great Canadian music. It was listening to Road Apples, the album, and it's just really nice sounding and extremely clear sounding, and I think that's the aluminum tweeter doing its job. I would say that after long listening sessions, because of the high level of clarity with these speakers, they definitely are not rolled off on the highs, so they would have a bit more, maybe there could be maybe some fatigue, I don't know, maybe not. I would say they've controlled it pretty well with these speakers, so you get that clarity, and it didn't really hurt my ears that much, but I could imagine it could potentially do that. As far as the woofer goes, they are also, I believe, an aluminum cone on the woofer. They are, I like it. I mean, they're pretty good. They're some sort of metallic blend. They're rated from 66 hertz, so they're not really bass monsters. I don't expect them to be bass monsters, but the bass that's there is really quite good quality. And yeah, I would say that 66 is a true reading for these in terms of its bass response. I do think that they're surprisingly, they sounded bigger than I thought they would when I set them up. And I do believe that has to do, again, with good amplification. This is the Yamaha RS700, so it's got about 100 watts, and it's a pretty clear sounding receiver, so you get pretty good sound coming through. So, you know, highs, mids, lows, all there. It's just, I would say, maybe loses a little bit on the mids, a tiny bit, and that's me nitpicking. Again, they're pretty excellent speakers. Highs, you know, could be sometimes a little bit tiresome, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe not. I would say it just depends on the music choice that you make, because like the Tragedy Clip wasn't that tiresome, but some of the other songs that I listened to, I know that the highs came through pretty strong. I would recommend these for, you know, they're better than a sound bar. I connect them to my TV and use them for TV sound, and they did pretty well because they have a decent amount of bass. They got pretty well defined highs, and they sounded quite nice. So I like these for sure. They're pretty nice, especially for the price. They're just very good. Soundstage imaging, I see imaging is where they're really strong, and I think that's where that tweeter being close to the woofer plays a big role, and that's really nice. Soundstage, I would say, considering their size, they sound pretty big. So soundstage A1, I would say. Imaging, really excellent. The imaging is what impressed me the most when I turned them on, and the size. Like just the size of the sound was pretty big. So take that for what you will. I'd say that these are not bad at all. Thank you again for watching. I think that's all I've got on the Energy CB-10 connoisseur speakers. Pretty decent. Definitely they will surprise you when you plug them in. So thank you very much for watching. See you next time on Revive Hi-Fi Canada. Bye now.